Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the On the Diamond and Into the Deep podcast. As always, I am your host, Mahal. And today, we are back with episode 89 of the podcast. Today is a big one. We are previewing the Mariners ALDS matchup with the Detroit Tigers. So, we will recap the wildcard round of the postseason. We will then talk about the Divisional Series, all four of them actually, briefly. We'll give you my predictions on who all I think is going to win those series, and I'll also give who I think will be the MVP of each of those series. I don't think they actually give out MVP awards, but I am going to give out MVP awards because I'm special. I got that. Of course, joking. But we'll then talk about the Detroit Tigers, who the Mariners will be facing in the Divisional Series. We'll talk a little bit about what happens if they win, but we will cross that bridge if/when we get there. But to begin, I do briefly want to touch on these scrimmages that have happened the past couple days, and they're low-key awesome. Awesome. I love it. And I think a big thing for me taking out of this wildcard round is teams are kind of figuring out what the formula is in these wildcard games. They're figuring out the formula with the expanded wildcard. They're figuring out what to do if you have the bye, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You get what I'm saying. Teams are getting used to it. They're figuring out what the strategies are. But ultimately, I think it's a really cool opportunity to get visualization. I saw some people talking about this on Twitter, Instagram, etc. Get the visualization, get some of those game-like reps, but also get experience for young guys. Get experiences for Cole Emerson. Get experience for him to see what it's like to be around a postseason baseball club in the major leagues. He's been around the minor league teams. He's seen what it's like going up through the farm system, but he should be up on this roster as soon as potentially May next year, if not earlier. I think he's going to have a battle for third base out of spring training on opening day if he wants to take it and run with it. He just got ranked as the 9th overall prospect according to MLB.com. That's a top 10 prospect. This guy is really good. He has a huge opportunity. I think third base is what is going to be his calling card next season. I think potentially shortstop after that once JP is gone. I don't think the Mariners are going to move JP, but I think that's also the type of discussion we will talk about in the offseason when we get to that discussion. That said, as I was saying, scrimmage is really awesome. So cool to see Ichiro. The picture of Ichiro and Cole Emerson is freaking awesome. But ultimately, it keeps you fresh, it gets you some game-like reps, and it also rests your bullpen, rests your starters. And on your starters, I think this is where I'm going to start very quickly, is Brian Wu. We'll talk about it more in a few minutes. But Brian Wu's a big deal. We don't really know if he's going to pitch in this division series. We will maybe know more tomorrow. We might not know more until Saturday comes. First game is Saturday at 5:38 p.m. I will be sat just behind me. My projector will be on. We will have the game on. We'll be watching. We'll be rocking and rolling. I can't wait. You see, I got my postseason hat here. I'm excited. Obviously, who's not excited? I mean, I think for me, the nerves start to settle in each and every day, just imagining it. But I think Saturday will definitely be a nervy day overall as we lead into that. And then Sunday will be just as nervy, depending on what happens in Game 1, obviously. But if they lose Game 1, I'm going to be sick to my stomach on Sunday. I'll tell you that much. But hopefully they win Game 1, and I'll still be a little bit sick to my stomach, because Game 2, you go win Game 2, and you've set yourself up to very likely win this series. Now, obviously, we don't know for sure. Knock on wood if that were to happen. But you will probably have Tariq Skubal in Game 2, and that is no easy feat. No easy feat. We'll talk about that again later in this episode. So, without further ado, let's get talking about the wildcard series. I'm going to start with the order in which they finished. So, first game, Dodgers, for first series, Dodgers-Reds. 2-game series, Dodgers get the sweep. The takeaway for me is it's apparent how much better the Dodgers were than the Reds. And it was apparent in the starting pitching. It was apparent in the lineup. It was apparent in experience. But I also think it is worthy to say the Reds aren't that far off. They're missing, I think, a truly legit bat or two. And they're obviously missing the starting pitching. I mean, Hunter Green, that was his first postseason start, and he wasn't good enough. There's no question about that. But it's not going to be easy to go into Dodger freaking Stadium, a raucous environment that is amazing, against a truly super team where you have Shohei Ohtani leading off. Maybe the greatest baseball player, in my opinion, the greatest baseball player of all time. I don't know if that's a hot take. I don't think that's a hot take. But that's a really difficult environment to go in for your first ever postseason start. So I can't blame him. So I think for me, the takeaway is the Dodgers, they are a good team. Are they going to be good enough to get past the Phillies? I don't know. I really don't know. And as someone that is not a Dodgers fan, like inherently not a Dodgers fan, I have a lot of Dodgers fans around me, I'll tell you that much. Last night, I was sitting next to two Dodgers fans while I was watching the Reds and the Dodgers game too. And I was rooting for the Reds. They were rooting for the Dodgers, obviously. And that's a fun thing to go through. But the Dodgers are a very good baseball team. They are built up. The questions I would have around the Dodgers are, can their starting pitching continue what they did? How do they look away from Dodger Stadium? And how does their bullpen stand up against a better lineup that the Phillies are going to have? Because the Reds lineup, let's face it, it's good, it's not great. And it looked very bad in this series, in my opinion. Moving on, let's talk about the Detroit and Cleveland series. This was a really good series. Overall, this was a really good wild card round, I think. This was a lot of fun to watch. I sat myself down all 3 days, watched pretty much the entirety of all games every day. So 4 games, 3 games. Watched pretty much the entirety of each of those games. Obviously, once each one got out of hand a little bit, if they got out of hand, I wasn't like fully paying attention, but I was watching pretty intently to all these series. That series, the biggest takeaway is the guards magic's really annoying. I would not have wanted to face that. That said, I don't want to face Turk Scoop. I mean, this dude is... he's insane. Like, a truly dominant guy. And Detroit have some hitters. Dylan Dingler is a lot better than I remembered. I'm not going to do a profile on him necessarily in this episode. I got 2 hitters I want to do profiles on specifically because I like those guys as players. But Cleveland didn't have enough firepower. They didn't have enough in their bullpen. They didn't have enough in their starting rotation. And I think Detroit also, I don't know if they have enough in their bullpen. We'll see. I don't want to say too much about Detroit where it's like I'm shitting on Detroit because we have Detroit coming into T-Mobile Park in 2 days. So it's a tough one because I don't want to like jinx it and like I'm not trying to like not get clipped, but like nobody wants to like get clipped. You know what I'm saying? Anyways, that said, it was a really good series. It could have gone either way. Detroit obviously had the big inning today that pulled them inside. Yesterday it was Cleveland that had the big inning and that pulled them out. The first game was really good. It was a really close game. It was a great game. Really entertaining baseball, actually. It was fun to see managers. For me, actually, the biggest takeaway overall was it was fun to see managers managing the postseason. This isn't something I've really thought about when I'm watching it, but how early they were polling starting pitchers, how they were managing that bullpen, how they were managing bunts, pinch hitters, etc. It was the moment I remember today was the Padres and the Cubs game. Cubs, middle of the at-bat, bringing a pitcher. This is the ninth inning, I believe. And was that today? Or was that last night? No, it was last night. It was the Dodgers and the Reds. Dave Roberts comes out mid at bat, brings in a new bullpen arm for the Dodgers. The Reds counter. It's a 1-2 count. They counter with a pinch hitter, and he strikes out on that first pitch. And I'm like, I understand what Tito's doing there, but it's also like, that's a really difficult position to be put in as a pinch hitter. Like, you basically got to swing. I don't know. It's as someone that loves baseball, it's a really fun thing to watch. Moving on, Cubs Padres. This was another really, really good series. Today wasn't quite as good as a game. And that's just because the Padres lineup wasn't that good in general, and the Cubs pitching kind of dominated. But overall, it was a great series, really entertaining baseball all around. I didn't really expect the Cubs to come out of it, just because I didn't think they had the pitching, but they did. I think the Padres lineup hit a cold spell, which that happens to the best teams. But I mean, I'd be sick to my stomach right now if I were a Padres fan. I'd feel awful. You make some moves at the trade deadline, and you have only a few more shots really before guys start getting old. You traded Leo DeVries at the trade deadline for Mason Miller. Mason Miller looked disgusting, dominant. I mean, dude's pumping 103, 104, which is absurd. But that's a potential 5-tool shortstop. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah. And Robert Suarez is a free agent, so they got decisions to make. It'll be really interesting to see what they do this offseason. But that was a great series again. It was cool to see how the Padres managed their bullpen in that game. They pulled started really early. I was surprised they didn't necessarily pull earlier today. Couple runs they gave up. But overall, pulled guys early, and their offense just really couldn't get it done. It was a very Mariners-esque, it felt like, loss. And maybe that's why they share a spring training complex. It's the similar teams. Moving on to probably the prime time for everybody's most exciting series, Yankees-Red Sox. It was a 3-game series again. The last one I've talked about all 3-game series except for the Dodgers and the Reds. This was another good series. I think the team that you expected to come out on top came out on top. And I think Game 3 especially was apparent on why. The Yankees are 3 starters deep pretty much, especially if Schlitter looks like Schlittler. I don't know what it is. I don't really care. I'm not a fan of him. Like, I hate the Yankees being so, like, being totally transparent. I despise the Yankees. So seeing them win sucks. But that said, like, it was a really entertaining series. Today, Boston got kind of dominated. I think the holes in their lineup also very apparent. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Alex Bregman this offseason. But the Yankees looked like the better team. They had some guys come up with clutch hits. Anthony Volpe looked actually really good this series, surprisingly. And I think if he can stay hot for them, they might be able to make a run. That said, they run into a very good Blue Jays team that has been very good, especially this year. How good are they truly? I don't know. We'll see what their starting pitching looks like, if it can keep up what it's done. But overall, again, the better team came out on top in this series. Moving on, let's do some quick DS predictions. We're going to go through all of the series, give who I think is going to win, and give who I think is going to be sort of that MVP for that team in the series. Starting with Dodgers-Phillies, this is going to be a 5-game series, and I think the Phillies come out on top at the bank. And I think Kyle Schwarber has a big clutch home run in that game. He's been very good this year. He has a ton of postseason experience. He was on that 2016 Cubs team that won the World Series. I think he's going to have a pretty big legendary moment here for the Phillies and send them off to face the Brewers or the Cubs. Next one, I'll talk about Seattle-Detroit. Again, I'm doing these in the same order that games finished or series finished. So last night, obviously, Dodgers, and then Detroit, and then the Cubs, and then Yankees. As a Mariners fan, I don't really think I can fully grade this, but if I'm going to, I'm going to give Seattle in 4, and I'm going to give the MVP to Logan Gilbert. I could totally see this being a 5-game series. And if it gets to 5 games, and you got Tarek Skubal on the mound in Game 5, that's going to be difficult. So he's no joke. He's going to be a really difficult guy. I know he has good number, or the Mariners have good numbers against him, but it's the postseason. Guys elevate their stuff. They're the best versions of themselves, so I don't think that really means much of anything for me. Brewers-Cubs, I got the Brewers. I think the Cubs pitching staff isn't in good enough condition to win this series. I don't think the Brewers are really that good. I think the Phillies are going to come out on top in the end. I'll tell you that much right now. But I think the Brewers come out on top, and I think the MVP for them is going to be Sal Frelick, second baseman. Wait, is it Bryce Terang? Wait, am I thinking of the wrong guy? Hold on. I feel like I'm thinking of the wrong guy. That'd be so awkward. Is Sal Frelick the right fielder? Maybe Sal Frelick's the right fielder. What position do I play? I was thinking of Bryce Terang. We'll give it to Sal Frelick. You know what? This is a random guy that he's had a pretty solid season. 756 OPS. We'll give it to him. Sal Frelick, outfielder, MVP. That's really awkward. That shows how much I know about the National League, and especially the National League Central, especially the Brewers. Awkward. Continuing on back to the American League. Blue Jays, Yankees. This is going to be a good series. Last series. Brewers in 4. Give me that. I think they'll do it at Wrigley. I think they'll be able to win a game or two there. I think they'll win 2, Cubs come back to Wrigley, win 1, and then Brewers come back. Jays, Yankees. I think the Blue Jays come out on top of the series. This is going to be a great series. 5 games for sure, in my opinion. But I have the Blue Jays coming on top. I got a clutch home run from Vladimir Guerrero Jr. because who else? I think that's the guy that if the Jays want to win this series, I think he's going to need to come in clutch for that lineup because they're going to need home runs, and I think he's the guy to do it. Obviously, George Springer also, and he could have some clutch moments. He has tons of postseason experience, and that's a big deal when it comes to the postseason. But I think it will be Vladdy in this series. That would mean Phillies versus Brewers, Seattle versus Toronto, which that'd be 2 great series. I also want to mention, like, the series that are happening right now have been all really good, like really entertaining series, except for Dodgers Reds. Like Cubs Padres, that's a really fun matchup. Yankees Red Sox, obviously a great matchup. Detroit Cleveland, again, obviously divisional, great matchup. Dodgers Phillies is going to be a great matchup. I think the most boring is Seattle Detroit. Like, and as a Mariners fan, I'm pumped for that. Brewers Cubs, that's a great matchup in division. Craig Counsell matchup, going to be fantastic. And then interdivision, Blue Jays versus Yankees, maybe the top 2 teams in the AL, 2 of the top 3 teams, absolutely. So it's going to be really entertaining. I think it's going to be a great round, and I think we're going to get great ALCS and NLCS matchups, and hopefully great World Series. Obviously, I mean, if I'm going to hope for a World Series, I'm hoping for Seattle, Philly, and that's not because I don't. That's not because I think the Mariners can beat the Phillies, but that's because I think that'd just be a really great matchup, and having friends that are Phillies fans would also be really cool. And I also don't want to face any Central teams ever again after Detroit because I hate playing Central Division teams. They make me want to like lose my mind and explode. That said, we're 16 minutes in and we haven't even gotten to the bulk of this episode. Let's talk about it. We might have to run through this a little bit. My biggest worries for this series: Mariners, Detroit, obviously starting Saturday. Saturday, Sunday will be in Seattle. Tuesday, Wednesday will be in Detroit. Wednesday, if necessary, obviously. And then, if necessary, I believe Game 5 would be Friday? Don't know about that for sure. I'm pretty sure that's what it would be. Okay, let's do this thing, though. So, biggest worries for me: Tarek Skubal, no question. I will say Kerry Carpenter's also in the back of my head. I didn't write that down. That's also there. And then Brian Woo's injury is also a big deal. If he's not available to go, I think that changes That changes this series massively. So I think that's the biggest thing. For me, the confidence builders are the bullpens. The back of the bullpen for me in Detroit is hittable. That's a bullpen that's hittable. You can do that. You're going to see arms very likely tomorrow, especially because they're very likely going to be doing, or not tomorrow, Saturday, but when this comes out tomorrow. You're going to see these arms once in Game 1, and I think that matters because once you see them once, I believe the next time you see them, you have a better chance of hitting them. And I think stats probably back that up. We saw that in the wild card round. The more guys saw bullpen arms, the more they were able to hit them. And I also think that the Mariners having good left-handed bullpen arms is going to play a big role in this series. I think that addition of Caleb Ferguson, nobody's talking about it, but I think that addition could be a massive one in this series because this is a team in Detroit that has good left-handed hitters, but they're also you are able to get those guys out with left-handed pitchers, and I think that's a big deal. And I think the best guys in that lineup, the guys that I'm most fearful of, knock on wood, are going to be left-handed hitters. So I think Gabe Spire, Caleb Ferguson are going to be massive, massive guys in this series. On that left-handedness, that's also a worry for me because all your starters are right-handed pitchers. They all do have pitches that can combat that. Can combat left-handed hitters, but it's still a fear and a worry for you, I think, absolutely. And we've seen why that's a tough matchup in 2023, 2024, 2022. We've seen why that's a tough matchup. We've seen why Kerry Carpenter is a tough matchup because he's able to hit right-handed pitchers, and that's mostly what the Mariners throw. Whew, deep breath. Continuing on, how I'd slot the rotation if Woo is available. I'm going to assume he's not available to Game 4, so I'm going to have him in the 4 slot. I would go Logan first, and I think that is pretty much what everyone thinks. And then I would go Castillo at home, just because I'd rather see him at home than on the road. I would go Kirby in Game 3 on the road, Woo in Game 4. Logan would be my Game 5 starter. That would be back at T-Mobile Park. You get both of Logan's starts at T-Mobile Park. You would get Castillo's start at home, which I think is a big deal, and Kirby on the road is a little bit scary, but I do think that he would be able to do it, and I do think he'd be able to do it in that ballpark. That said, if you really want to look at matchups and like home versus road, I think your best bet is going Castillo Kirby on the road or on the at home maybe. That said, Logan has been virtually unhittable at home, knock on wood, for the most part this year. So I think that that is a guy you would want to have at home, especially twice, because let me tell you, Logan Gilbert versus Tarek Skubal at T-Mobile Park for Game 5 would be electric. It truly would be electric. Lineup, I will quickly go through this. This is how I'd slot it. This is probably how they're going to slot it. Randy, Cal, Julio, Naylor, Polanco, Gino, Canzone, Robles, and JP Robles in right field, obviously, the whole time, because I don't want Canzone really playing in the field. That's how I'd slot it. You're going to have guys to be able to run, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Pinch hit, hopefully, a little bit. But I think it'll be interesting for me to see how Dan Wilson manages this, and I'll get to that right at the end. But that is a nerve for me and a worry for me as well. Let's talk about the Tigers bullpen, though. They got two guys at the back end that I'm going to talk about. Will Vest, Mariners legend, Kyle Finnegan, who they traded for at the deadline from the Washington Nationals. Look at that ball knowledge. Will Vest, we're going to go through a few stats on each of those guys. Will Vest is in the 95th percentile in barrel percentage, 96th percentile in ground ball percentage. The ground ball percentage is a big thing with this bullpen overall. We'll get into it when we look at the whole bullpen stats, but they are a ground ball heavy bullpen. They're not heavy in Ks. They're not heavy. They're not going to walk you a whole lot. They're not going to get a ton of fly balls. It's going to be ground balls. You're going to need to get some lucky hits. You need to hit them hard. Hopefully you can get some line drives, get them through some holes, hit them hard up the middle, through the 5-6 hole, through the 3-4 hole. So we'll see what happens, but Will Vest, 96th percentile in ground ball percentage. He's in the 78th percentile in K percentage. That's obviously a good thing for him. Like, you want to be able to get K, but it's nothing super overwhelming there. He averages 96.5 miles an hour on his fastball. He throws a four-seam, a slider, and a sinker. Mostly going to be that four-seam and that slider. The sinker is going to show up every once in a while, though. Kyle Finnegan, 82nd percentile in ground ball again. Heavy ground ball from these guys. He averages just over 96 miles an hour on that fastball, and he's mostly a fastball splitter guy. You're going to see fastballs, four-seam fastballs especially. You're going to see a lot of sinkers in this series, especially from starters, and you're going to see a splitter, obviously, from Kyle Finnegan. Overall ranks of the bullpen, 17th in ERA. This is a very mid bullpen overall. Knock on wood. 17th in ERA. They are just below Toronto and the New York Mets, and they were just above the White Sox and the Atlanta Braves overall this season. They're 24th in FIP, 30th in Ks per nine. That is very last. So like I said, they don't get a ton of strikeouts, but they do get ground balls. They're second in ground ball percentage at 47% of the time. They're 12th in walk percentage, 18th in home run percentage. Sorry, is that 16th in home run percentage at home runs per nine at 1.13 home runs per nine, and 12th in walk percentage at 3.3 walks per nine. They have a whip. They're 16th in whip in terms of bullpens at just over 1.3. They're 14th in hard hit at 40%, just over that. 9th in barrel percentage at 7.5%. 20th in average fastball velocity at 94.5 miles an hour. So the biggest things with these bullpens you're going to remember are they don't really get very many strikeouts overall, and they get a ton of ground balls. So the ball is going to be on the ground. You're going to have to rack up some base hits together, and you're probably not going to be able to hit a ton of home runs because of that. Moving on, let's talk about the lineup. This is going to be a little bit brief, but we do want to talk about two guys. These are both left-handed hitters, Kerry Carpenter and Riley Green. Starting off with Kerry Carpenter, and this guy is a very good hitter. He had a little bit of an series in Cleveland, but this is a Mariners killer. This is a very good hitter, and he's a guy that I personally do love as a player. Now I might hate him after the series, but I do love him as a hitter as of right now. Both these guys I do love. Kerry Carpenter is second. Oh my God. Second percentile in walk percentage at 4%. He's not going to walk a lot. That's the lowest of his career. He's 15th in chase percentage, 34%. So he's also going to chase. And those two things obviously make sense that they go in tandem. He has a 115 WRC plus with 26 home runs and an on base below 300. And obviously that makes sense with the really low walk percentage. But that is something that I think is noticeable and worth mentioning, that on base is below 300 over the entire season. This is also a guy that can't hit lefties very well. He has a 71 WRC plus versus lefties. So expect this to be an area where you see Gabe Spire, where you see Caleb Ferguson, but especially Gabe Spire. On the road, I don't think this is a big deal because T-Mobile Park is a tough place to hit anyway, but he does have an 89 WRC plus away from Comerica Park. He has a 143 at home, so that is something that is definitely worth mentioning. Versus the M's in his career, he has hit 375 with 6 home runs in 11 games. This year, looking at a couple pitches, the top 3 pitches you've seen are fastball, sliders, and changeup. He has a 218 WRC plus versus fastballs, a 53 versus sliders, and a 57 versus changeups. Expect the Mariners to try and make him chase. Expect them not to throw him a ton of fastballs, unless they really have to. But I'd expect a lot of sliders, a lot of changeups, splitters, curveballs when you have them. But I'd expect, again, Gabe Spire to be the guy that is deployed against him more often than not. Riley Green, also a left-handed bat. He is 4th in strikeout percentage. He strikes out a lot, over 30% of the time. He is 12th in whiff percentage, 12th percentile. Both of those percentiles, obviously. And he is almost 31% of the time on that whiff rate. He's in the 95th percentile of barrel percentage. And over the season, he had a 121 WRC plus. He was 21% above league average with 36 home runs, and he was worth almost 3 wins. He also has some heavy platoon splits, just a 74 WRC plus versus lefties. And he struggled in the second half. He had a 90 WRC plus in the second half and a 68 WRC plus in September and October, so he struggled a lot. He was 2 for 6 in the wild card round, so he had a decent series, but nothing super overwhelming, no home runs, no RBIs. Over the course of the season, he had a 140 WRC plus versus fastballs. This is another guy that hits fastballs pretty well, not to the same extent that Kerry Carpenter does, who just crushes fastballs. But he does hit fastballs better than he does, like for a slider example, which he is perfectly league average against with a 100 WRC plus against those. The lineup as a whole for the Tigers over the course of the season ranked 12th in WRC+. They ranked 10th in home runs, 11th in runs, 27th in K percentage, and 14th in walk percentage. This is a team that's going to strike out, but they want to hit their home runs. They want to score runs, and they didn't hit a ton of home runs in the wildcard series. They only hit 1, and it was Dylan Dingler. So it will be interesting to see if they can break out of that slump a little bit and hit some home runs in Seattle. But the Mariners have a good pitching staff, so hopefully they can keep those bats at bay. Now we get into the most interesting part of the series, in my opinion, and it's the starters. Obviously, we have the lefty Tarik Skubal up first. He will probably start in Game 2. In his start during the wildcard round, he went 7 2/3 innings. He gave up just 1 run on 3 hits on 3 walks, and he had 14 strikeouts. A dominant outing, maybe the best outing of the entire wildcard round. That is until the guy named Cam Schlitter. I don't know. Not Shitter. That's definitely not his name. But until he stepped on the mound, this was the best start, in my opinion, of the wildcard round. It was a dominant outing where he just looked like he was the boss. He looked like he was in charge. He set the tone for the series. And if not for really the blow-up inning in Game 2, the Tigers very easily could have swept this series. Continuing on Skubal, though, he had a 2.21 ERA over the course of the year with a 2.45 FIP. He had quality starts in 21 of 31 starts this year. And he is very dominant. Over 11 strikeouts per 9. He's the 94th percentile in strikeout percentage, over 32% of the time. In terms of walks, he doesn't give up a ton of walks. He's in the 97th percentile in walk percentage at below 4.5%, and just 1.5 walks per 9. Home runs, he's below 1 per every 9 inning. If you want the exact number, it's 0.83 home runs per every 9 innings. And he is going to get heavy chase. He's going to limit his exit velocities, and he's not going to give up a ton of walks. He's 97th percentile in all 3 of those. In terms of his arsenal, he's a changeup, 4-seam, sinker, slider guy. He throws that changeup at 31% of the time, the 4-seam at 30% of the time, sinker at 24% of the time, and the slider at 12% of the time. Against lefties, he's going to be heavy sinker with 42% sinker against lefties. He's then going to use the 4-seam next most, 21% fastball, so that's 63% fastball overall. He's going to be a heavy fastball guy, and then he uses that changeup 20% of the time, and the slider is 17% of the time. Versus right-handed hitters, he is going to be using that changeup the most, 34% of the time. Then he's going to use the four seam, so it's going to be a heavy usage of those two. Those two pitches combined for 66% of the time. And then he's going to also throw a sinker 20% of the time and the slider 11% of the time against right-handed hitters. This is a dominant pitcher. This guy is going to be really difficult to face, especially in October when he's going to want to have his best stuff. He's coming back to Seattle. He's going to have some sort of revenge where he doesn't want to get roughed up by them again when he's got roughed up by them twice already this year. And I don't think that really plays a role come October. I think that's just a talking point that Mariners fans want to make themselves feel better. And if anything, it makes me more scared. Moving on, the second starter, this will be the Game 3 starter very likely, will be Casey Mize. He's a right-handed starter. He threw 3 innings, gave up just 1 run on 1 hit, and it was a home run. And he gave up just 2 walks and 1 strikeout over those 3 innings. That was in Game 2 of the Wild Card Series. Obviously, that was the game that the Tigers lost, but not the biggest deal in the world, of course. Over the course of the season, he had a 3.87 ERA, 3.89 FIP. He quality starts in 9 out of 28 starts. In terms of strikeouts, walks, home runs, let's run through it. Under 8.5 strikeouts per 9, that's the 47th percentile, 22.2% of the time. He has a 5.7% walk rate, that's the 87th percentile, and just over 2 walks per 9. Home runs per 9 is just over 1.25 home runs per 9. So he's not going to give up a ton of home runs. He's not going to walk you, but he's also not going to strike you out an overwhelming amount, especially compared to Skubal. And going from facing Skubal to facing Mize is definitely a big difference. In terms of his Savant page, he has 3 things above 50%. In the percentile rankings, that's the fastball velo, it's the expected batting average, that's expected ERA, and that's the walk percentage. Everything else is below 50, the 50th percentile, so he's below the average in everything else. In terms of his arsenal, he throws 34% four-seam, 24% splitter, 15% slider, 14% slurve, and 12% sinker. In terms of left-handed hitters, you're going to see mostly that four-seam and that splitter, 41% four-seam, 32% splitter, but he's also going to throw that slider almost 20% of the time. The slurve is going to be thrown under 10% of the time, and the sinker is going to be thrown 1% of the time. Against right-handed hitters, it's going to be a different mix. You're going to see heavy four-seam, you're going to see heavy sinker, you're going to see heavy fastball overall in. Over 50% of the time, you're going to see either the four-seam or the sinker. And then you're also going to see the slurve over 20% of the time, the split 15% of the time, and the slider 12% of the time. The splitter is his best pitch. When he has his splitter, I think his splitter has been hit the hardest. Sorry. Very confusing there. His splitter has been hit the hardest. It has a slug just under 500. That said, it also has a 33% whiff, so I think that's a big turning point. If he has that good splitter where he can get the whiff and he can get strikeouts, that's going to be the good Casey Mize. If he can't, it's going to be a lot more difficult for him to get outs, especially against left-handed hitters where he uses that splitter 32% of the time. In terms of platoon splits, he's pretty even. But in terms of ERA, he has struggled more in the second half. He had a 4.92 ERA in the second half. That said, most of that is from July and August. In July, he had a 6.32, and in August, he had a 5.82. In September, October, he came back to what he normally is with a 3.49 in those 2 months. Jack Flaherty is going to be the last starter. Flaherty will start Game 4 if necessary. He threw 4 2/3 innings today, giving up just 3 hits, 1 run on those 3 hits, 2 walks, and 4 strikeouts. He had a 4.64 ERA over the season, a 3.85 FIP. He underperformed according to FIP. He had quality starts in 10 of his 31 starts. His Ks per 9 were in this 82nd, or his strikeout percentage was in the 82nd percentile, 27.6%. That's 10.5 strikeouts per 9. Walks per 9, he's going to walk you a little bit, 8.7% walk rate. That's a 36th percentile, so he is below league average in that. And that's 3.3 walks per 9. Home runs per 9 is very similar to that of Casey Mize. They're just barely different. Flaherty gives up 0.02 more. So if you want those calculations, it's 1.3 home runs per 9 basically. He's in the 66th percentile in whiff percentage. That said, he has struggled with barrel, hard hit, average exit velocity, and he only throws his fastball 92.8 miles an hour on average. He's in the 18th percentile in barrel percentage, 22nd hard hit, 38th percentile in average exit velocity. All of those, again, below league average, with the barrel, in my opinion, significantly below league average. If you want that arsenal, which I'm assuming if you're listening to this, you do, because that's what I like to cover. 47% four seam, 25% cutter, 24% slider, 3% changeup, 2% sinker. Against lefties, you're mostly going to see those first 30 pitches. Against righties, you're also mostly going to see those first 3 pitches. Lefties, you're going to see 45% four seam, 25% cutter, 24% slider. Against righties, almost 50% of the time you're going to see that four seam, 25% cutter, and then 23% slider. Flaherty has had a 5.27 ERA away from Comerica Park, but it does sound like he is probably going to be starting at Comerica Park, which has been where he's been better. In terms of that last starter for the Detroit Tigers, it's going to be a bullpen game. This is likely going to be game 1, which you're going to be like, oh yeah, we get a bullpen day. We get to wear out their bullpen. Like, yes, but also Tarek Skubal starts the next game, and he went almost 8 full innings. So they only used 1 bullpen arm that day. And you might be like, oh, the Mariners should win against the bullpen. And like, yeah, they should win against the bullpen. But that's something that they've struggled with. They've struggled when pitchers change a lot. So it will be interesting for me, especially to watch how that pans out. I expect the Mariners to come out on fire. I expect them to come out energized, ready to rock and roll. And hopefully they can get that win in game 1, because that's going to set the tone for the whole series. Lastly, I do want to touch on the managers. AJ Hinch, very experienced manager, very experienced postseason manager. He's 33 and 26 overall in the postseason all time. This is a very good manager. This is a very good postseason manager. He knows what he's doing. And Dan Wilson hasn't managed in the postseason, so I think that is going to come into play, and I think that's something that people aren't talking about. But I'm nervous to see how Dan Wilson manages his bullpen, manages his pinch hitters, managing his bunt. But at the same time, this might be where he comes in best. He might be best where he just knows, I got to pull my starter when I got to pull my starter, and I got to switch bullpen arms when I got to switch bullpen arms, and I got to use pinch hitters when I got to use pinch hitters, and bunts actually do come into play. Sometimes you just need that 1 or 2 runs. It'll be interesting to see no matter what. I really hope the Mariners can come out on top of this, and by the time we're recording next Thursday, the Mariners will have already won the series, and we can talk about the American League Championship Series. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Game 1 and Game 2 this weekend. Game 3 will be Tuesday. As always, y'all, go frickin' M's. Follow me at Diamond on Deep. Twitter will be tweeting during these games for the most part. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. As always, go M's, go Ners. Peace. Let's get the mob rocking, y'all.